Missing in the Blue Mountains. The Emma Green Case. Mystery of Kedumba River Crossing. Cold Case, New South Wales. Part 1. Signal from the Void. September 14, 2012. 7:42 p.m. An incoming call is logged at the New South Wales Emergency Operations Centre. In the Blue Mountains National Park, satellite reception is patchy. The man's voice on the other end drowns in static, but the core of the message is clear. Deep within the Kedumba Valley, someone has gone missing. The caller is 38-year-old Thomas Green, a Sydney-based lawyer. He reports that his wife, Emma Green, left their campsite around 6 in the morning. At the time of the call, she has been missing for over 13 hours. Following protocol, the dispatcher relays the data to the nearest police station in Wentworth Falls. The Kedumba Valley is located just a 2-hour drive from Sydney, but that's only the time it takes to reach the boundary of the restricted access zone. To get to the site, one must turn off the highway onto Kedumba Valley Road and drive to the locked steel gates where civilization ends. Beyond that lies only a steep 8-kilometer descent on foot along a fire trail, snaking its way down 800 meters into the heart of the canyon. This is a land of ancient vegetation and sandstone cliffs, which locals call the Green Labyrinth. The canopy of eucalyptus and giant ferns closes in so tightly here that the ground hasn't seen direct sunlight in decades. Despite the existence of the official Kedumba River Crossing campground, this place is the polar opposite of the Blue Mountains tourist hubs. There are clear signs leading to the site, but the campground itself is sparsely developed. Drop toilets, a small covered BBQ area, and that's it. Reception here is unstable, and compass needles jitter erratically, deviating by 15-20 degrees due to the high iron content in the rock. There is no on-site management, and one cannot count on a quick response from emergency services. The campsite is situated 100 meters from the old Maxwell's slab hut, built back in the 19th century. At this point, the Kedumba River intersects the trail, and it is here that the landscape becomes deadly. On that Thursday, Kedumba was especially treacherous. Forecasters had issued a warning the previous day about a sharp front and whiteout fog, a rare phenomenon where humidity reaches 100% and visibility drops to less than 2 meters. In such a haze, sounds become distorted. The rush of water begins to sound like a human voice, and the cry of a nocturnal bird like a groan. The thick mist turned the descent into a slippery clay trap, and the river, usually quiet, became a roaring torrent within hours of rainfall, cutting off the only exit from the valley. The duty officer at Wentworth Falls, assessing the condition of the washed-out road and the risk of landslides on the switchbacks, makes the decision to delay the departure. An entry appears in the station log. 8:20 p.m. Dispatch of patrol unit to Kedumba River Crossing postponed until dawn. Access via Kedumba Valley Road blocked due to zero visibility and risk of road washout. Transport of personnel into the valley depth impossible. Team start scheduled for 5:30 a.m. For Thomas Green, this meant he had to spend another 10 hours in the woods, alone. In total darkness, accompanied by the rhythm of the rain, trapped between Maxwell's hut and the raging river. Part 2, Road in the Mist. September 15th, 5:30 a.m. 2 4x4s departed Wentworth Falls. In the patrol car were Constable Jim Miller and his partner, Ben Clark. Following them was a National Park Service operational ute, carrying Senior Ranger Mark Harris and his assistant Adrian Cole. 40 minutes later, the headlights cut a white shape out of the gray haze. A Land Rover Defender was parked on the gravel turnout, right in front of the massive steel gates. The vehicle was empty, its windows clouded with a thick layer of frost on the inside. While Miller and Clark inspected the exterior, Harris and Cole struggled with the heavy lock. Finally, the chain gave way, and the steel gates creaked open, unblocking the path into the restricted zone. The descent into the valley was grueling. The road, officially known as Kedumba Valley Road, dropped nearly 800 meters over its 8-kilometer length, snaking steeply into the depths of the canyon. What was an exhausting hike for tourists became a true test of endurance for the vehicles. This narrow fire trail was prone to skidding. Gravel gave way to sodden clay. In the headlights, uprooted eucalyptus roots and deep washouts left by the overnight downpour, flashed by. The rain had turned the switchbacks into a slippery chute, down which the vehicles slowly slid toward the valley floor. By 7:15 a.m., the search party reached the end of the route. Mark Harris confidently led the convoy to Maxwell's hut, a low-slung, blackened slab hut that served as the primary landmark in this sector. 100 meters away, on the campground clearing right at the river's bend, a blue tent was visible. The officers found Thomas Green under a shelter. "I searched for her until dark yesterday," Green told Constable Miller. "I took the lower track along the bank, but between the fog and the roar of the water, I couldn't even hear my own voice. Cell service didn't kick in until late evening, which is when I called 000. I didn't risk leaving this spot on my own." According to the initial interview protocol, Emma Louise Green left the campsite on September 14th at approximately 6 a.m. She was wearing a pink hooded jacket and gray hiking pants, and was carrying a Nikon camera. According to her husband, he stayed at the camp because Emma didn't like company while she was doing photography. He waited for her until noon. It wasn't the first time she had gone off alone so that no one would interfere with her work. Thomas only began his own search once the fog became so thick that even the silhouette of Maxwell's hut started to blur. He pointed toward the upstream track, heading toward the rocky outcrops, as her likely direction. While Rangers Harris and Cole surveyed the area around the camp, Miller documented the scene: a high-quality tent, 2 sleeping bags, provisions, and camping gear. Under the awning by the fire pit sat an opened bag of charcoal. The police took a series of photos of the site. The overnight flood on the Kedumba River had completely submerged the shoreline, wiping away any possible tracks. At 7:30 a.m., Miller called in over the radio. "We are on site, confirming a missing person, requesting SES reinforcement." Part 3, the danger zone and a cold trail. By 10 a.m. on September 15th, the Kedumba River Crossing area had been transformed into an operational headquarters. Additional teams of SES volunteers had descended to Maxwell's hut. To organize the search, Mark Harris divided the riverbed into grid squares. While ground teams, one of which included Thomas Green, combed the banks, technical staff deployed a satellite station. Without it, there was no communication within the deep folds of the valley. The primary focus was placed on the Kedumba riverbed. At 11:15 a.m., a search team in a boat discovered a pink lens cap snagged on a willow branch 500 meters downstream. Green, who was a couple of kilometers away from the find, confirmed over the radio. The item belonged to his wife. This immediately allowed them to narrow the search zone. By noon, the fog had cleared enough for helicopter operations. The pilot methodically circled the grid squares, relying on a thermal imager. The air temperature had risen to 8 degrees, but after the overnight frost, the rocks in the canyon's shadow remained ice cold. Against such a high-contrast background, any human body heat should have glowed as a bright spot on the monitor. At 12:15 p.m., 2 kilometers downstream, in a grid designated as Sector B12, the thermal imager detected an anomaly on a rocky islet right in the middle of the riverbed. Due to a tangle of fallen trees and debris, it was impossible to see anything with the naked eye from the air. Ground teams, including Green, immediately scrambled toward the specified coordinates. The terrain there consisted of a series of rapids, making the operation hazardous for the rescuers themselves. By 1 p.m., the situation in B12 had reached a standstill. The freezing humidity had turned the riverside rocks into an ice rink. Ranger Harris placed a veto on any activity within the riverbed due to the threat of landslides. At the same time, the thermal imager completely lost the target. The soaked eucalyptus canopy acted as a screen, causing the weak heat signature to dissolve. Due to the raging current and the loss of contact, the order followed: evacuate the canyon immediately. At 2:30 p.m., the helicopter left to refuel. A heavy silence hung over the valley. When the drenched teams returned to camp, Green, despite his exhaustion, first asked about divers. The Rangers' response was blunt. They wouldn't send people into water like that even for the living. The Kedumba River belonged only to itself that day. At 4:30 p.m., an emergency warning was issued regarding an approaching storm front, which meant a risk of secondary flash flooding. The operation in the Kedumba River area was immediately shut down. According to safety regulations, All teams had to leave the lowlands before nightfall. Constable Miller and Ben Clark conducted the seizure of property. Following protocol, the personal belongings of the missing person were to be taken to the station for a detailed inventory and to rule out any leads not related to an accident. By 5 p.m., the last vehicle cleared the dangerous section of Kedumba Valley Road before potential landslides could block it. From that moment on, the valley was plunged into total isolation. For the next 4 days, access to the river was cut off. The tributaries overflowed, and the only road to the camp was completely washed out. Thomas Green was taken to the Wentworth Falls station. He was to give a detailed statement and reconstruct the minute-by-minute timeline of that morning's events. Part 4, the Dossier. 34-year-old Emma Green is a leading book illustrator for one of Australia's largest publishing houses. A week before the trip to the national park, Emma received an official offer to become the art director at the publisher's central office in London. This appointment meant reaching the highest rung of the professional ladder and international recognition of her work. Landscape photography was her second serious passion. She had planned the trip to the Kedumba River sector to complete a major photo project titled Seasons of the Blue Mountains before her potential departure from the country. Her husband, 38-year-old Thomas Green, is a corporate lawyer specializing in mergers and acquisitions, M&A. As a high-level solicitor, Thomas is used to handling multi-million-dollar contracts and complex ownership structures. His entire career is deeply embedded in Sydney's business sector. He is a man with a systemic, analytical mind. He is accustomed to managing risks and calculating the consequences of every move, which made him successful in his profession, but created a certain tension in his private life. During the trip, their 7-year-old son Oliver remained in Sydney. For the duration of the holidays, he went to stay with Thomas's parents, who live in a neighboring suburb. The backstory. In 2002, Thomas was 28. A young, ambitious lawyer from Sydney, he had traveled to London on his first major business trip to audit the assets of a British developer. Emma was 24. She was a typical girl from a well-to-do background with a degree from an art college, working freelance gigs for small catalogs and minor magazines, designing covers for indie publishers, and trying to find her own style. They met at a private exhibition in Shoreditch, where Thomas had been dragged by colleagues and Emma was attending for work. At that time, her life was fully mapped out and approved by her family. She had a fiancé, a promising London architect, and everything was heading toward a predictable future. Her romance with Thomas shattered that plan in a matter of weeks. His Australian directness was the complete opposite of her usual London circles. Just a month after meeting him, Emma shocked her parents. She broke off the engagement, dropped her ongoing projects, and flew to Sydney with Thomas. To her parents, her move to the other side of the world felt like a betrayal of their hopes. They had a massive falling out and didn't even attend her wedding. Over 10 years of living in Australia, the couple proved that this decision was deliberate and right. Emma grew into a highly sought-after professional, and the offer of the art director position in London was her chance to return home as a winner. Now, she could prove to her family that her impulsive choice back then hadn't been a mistake. Contact with her relatives had only resumed in the last few years, mostly via Skype. Her sister had visited her a couple of times over the years, but Emma herself hadn't been back to her homeland in all 10 years. Given the family's financial stability and the nature of Thomas's work, living between two cities was a perfectly manageable issue for them. The trip to the national park was an opportunity to quietly discuss the details of this new chapter, how best to organize the move, and which London school to enroll Oliver in. Part 5, a silent conclusion. 4 days later, the water levels in the Kedumba tributaries dropped, exposing a mangled riverbed. The river had changed beyond recognition. The flash flood had overturned boulders, uprooted riverside trees, and churned up new sandbars where deep pools had once been. SES teams and rangers returned to the Kedumba River sector for the second phase of the search. Thomas Green, who had returned to Sydney to be with his son during the flooding, arrived back at the camp. However, another 3 days of work yielded no results. The elements had completely scoured the area. Not a single trace was found. When the field headquarters in the bush was finally dismantled, Green returned to Sydney. The case files were transferred to the Central Police Headquarters on Liverpool Street to Detective Daniel Carter. Carter conducted a standard collection of information that did not require judicial warrants. He contacted Emma's colleagues at the publishing house and Thomas's colleagues at the law firm to clarify details of their last working day before the holiday. He also called Green's parents, confirming that 7-year-old Oliver had indeed been with them the entire time. This was a formal gathering of background character material, which supported the overall picture of a well-to-do, stable family. Since no leads indicating foul play were uncovered, and there were no legal grounds for a deep dive into their finances or private lives, Emma Louise Green's case was officially handed over to the New South Wales Coroner's Court. For the investigation, this meant a halt to active operations. Legally, Emma was now considered a missing person under unexplained circumstances. Part 6, Emergency Contact. April 20th, 2013. 5 months later, a call from London came into the Liverpool Street Police Headquarters. Claire Moore, Emma's older sister, reported that she had been contacted by a private clinic in Sydney. The medical center's administration was looking for a patient who had missed several scheduled appointments. It turned out that 2 weeks before the trip to the Blue Mountains, Emma had registered for prenatal care. The situation was complicated by the fact that she hadn't listed a home address on her intake form, leaving only her sister's UK number as her emergency contact. For Detective Daniel Carter, this information provided the grounds to reopen the investigation. Neither in the initial protocols from Wentworth Falls nor during the interviews in Sydney had Thomas Green ever mentioned his wife's condition. The fact that Emma had withheld her residential address from the clinic and chose to link her medical profile to a sister in another country pointed to a deliberate effort to keep this information from her husband. Carter officially reactivated the case. Now the investigation had to determine whether Thomas Green knew about his wife's pregnancy. The bureaucratic machine took its time. Obtaining the judicial warrants to access private information was a lengthy process. Once he had the legal standing, Carter filed requests with Emma's and her husband's mobile service providers, the publishing house's management, and the banks where the family held accounts. The audit revealed that, in addition to the personal smartphone, which was never recovered from the Kedumba Valley, Emma had a work mobile phone. The device was physically located at her office. Due to corporate confidentiality policies, the publisher's security department had not turned it over to the police without an official request. When the first billing records from Emma's work phone landed on Carter's desk, he saw that a significant portion of the traffic consisted of international calls to London. The last signal from Emma's personal cell phone was logged by a tower in the Wentworth Falls area on the afternoon of September 13th. According to the billing records from recent months, Emma used this number for standard communication, calling her husband, Oliver's school, and chatting with friends. Simultaneously, Carter requested a detailed report from the publisher's accounting department regarding Emma's business trips over the past few years. The list included numerous trips across the entire country. Part 7, Financial Audit. An analysis of the bank accounts confirmed the family's stable financial position. The couple had been making their mortgage payments on time, and Emma's transactions showed no anomalies. In Thomas Green's statements, however, there were repeated transfers of large sums to a private detective agency, the same number previously found in the billing records. Simultaneously, the investigation received data from the insurance company. Both spouses had life insurance policies where they were named as each other's beneficiaries. The insurance agent confirmed that Thomas Green had not filed a claim for Emma's payout. This makes legal sense, as she is officially listed as a missing person rather than deceased. The only recorded change in the insurance files was Thomas's update to his own policy. He had amended the terms so that in the event of his death, their son Oliver would be the sole beneficiary. Meanwhile, the technical department at Liverpool Street began mirroring the data from Emma's work computer. Fortunately, the corporate workstation had stored logs for the past 300 days. The browser cache, which had not been cleared due to the company's automatic backup settings, was recovered. In addition to searches regarding family law and the nuances of divorce proceedings in Australia, specialists discovered a hidden array of data in Emma's corporate email that settled all the questions. The correspondence was with a British architect, Julian Ward. the very man Emma had broken her engagement with before leaving for Australia. After 8.5 years, Julian, who had never married, tracked her down, and their romance was reignited. Their daily communication in emails and chats confirmed a double life. It was because of him that Emma had applied to the publisher's head office in London and ultimately received the offer for the art director position. Thomas was aware of his wife's upcoming relocation and appointment, but he officially knew nothing of Julian's existence. The correspondence left no doubt about the nature of Emma's business trips across Australia. Every time she traveled interstate for work, Ward would fly in from the UK to the same location. From the letters, it became clear that Emma was planning a permanent move to London, along with their son Oliver. Part 8. A visit to the detective agency. Based on the records of regular payments from Thomas's accounts, Carter contacted the private detective agency to which Green had been transferring funds. The agency's owner, Marcus Vance, fearing for his license and unwilling to be implicated as an accomplice in a missing person case, did not obstruct the investigation. He handed over to Carter the complete file of materials collected over the course of a year. The dossier included a detailed background report on Julian Ward, his London address, information on his financial standing, his successful architectural practice, and the specifics of his past broken engagement to Emma. Attached to the report was a substantial stack of photographs confirming their clandestine meetings. From the provided materials, it became clear that Thomas possessed exhaustive information regarding the identity of his wife's lover and the very fact of the affair. According to Marcus Vance, when Green collected this massive amount of incriminating evidence in late July, he behaved with a chilling calmness. Thomas methodically studied the dossier on Ward, looked through the photos, and only clarified whether Emma or anyone in her circle could have noticed the surveillance during that period. After receiving confirmation of total confidentiality, Green settled the bill and never appeared at the agency again. Part 9. The Interrogation. May 13, 2013. Thomas Green appeared at the police headquarters following an official subpoena. The case of Emma Green's disappearance had been officially reclassified as a murder investigation, and Thomas was the prime suspect. In the interrogation room, Carter laid out the materials from Marcus Vance's agency before him. Mr. Green, during our first meeting, you gave the impression of a man whose marriage was, if not perfect, then quite stable. Carter began. You claimed you knew of no reason why your wife would keep anything from you.
I still claim that, Detective.
Then how do you explain this? You hired Marcus Vance a year ago. You received this report at the end of July. You knew about Julian Ward, and you knew Emma was planning to take Oliver and move to London for good.
Yes, I knew.
And you decided to arrange a reconciliation trip to one of the most dangerous places in the state right after you learned about the affair and her plans to leave.
This entire trip was Emma's initiative,
Green replied calmly.
Our 10-year wedding anniversary was coming up, and besides, she needed to complete her Seasons of the Blue Mountains photo project. She handled all the planning and organization herself. She had much more experience in those matters. I simply agreed to her idea. I hoped that there, away from the city, we could talk without lawyers or mediators. I wanted to save my family. The fact that I knew about her fling doesn't make me a murderer. It makes me a betrayed husband who, until the very end, tried to keep a home for his son.
You withheld the fact of the surveillance from the investigation from day one. You lied to us.
I did not lie. As a lawyer, I answer exactly the questions I am asked. You asked if I knew where she was. I said no. You didn't ask if I had hired a private detective. I hired Vance to gather evidence for divorce proceedings, should it come to that. I needed Oliver to stay with me in Australia. To kill the mother of my child is to deprive him of both parents at once. I do not make such logical errors.
Part 10. The Search. Following the interrogation, Carter presented Thomas with a search warrant for his home, vehicle, and his office at the law firm. The detective asked if Green wished to be present during the process. Thomas replied in the affirmative. His 4x4 was sealed right in the station parking lot for subsequent towing to the forensic garage. Green, accompanied by police, proceeded to his residence. The search of the house was conducted methodically, and took several hours. All rooms were examined using ultraviolet light and chemical reagents to check for lingering biological traces or signs of professional deep cleaning. All electronics were seized: Thomas's personal laptop, the base unit, and Emma's personal computer. Personal financial documents, diaries, and folders containing private files were all inventoried. Forensic experts seized the clothing and hiking boots Thomas had worn on the day of the incident in the Blue Mountains National Park. These were sent to the lab for complex analysis. Specialists were to compare soil microparticles and pollen trapped in the tread with the unique flora and geological profile of the Kedumba Valley. This was necessary to verify Green's statement and rule out the possibility that he had ventured beyond the stated route into other areas of the mountain range. In the garage, the family's second vehicle, an Emma Green-owned Volvo XC60 all-wheel drive, was discovered and sealed. A search for biological traces was conducted on the tools and equipment in the garage and the shed. The backyard was inspected for the condition of the soil and any signs of earthworks that might have taken place during those 5 months. Simultaneously, a second team of officers worked at Green's office. The search was conducted under the supervision of an independent delegate from the Law Society and in the presence of the firm's IT head, who provided technical access to the system without compromising the confidentiality of other employees' data. Specialists from the cybercrime unit performed mirroring of the data from Thomas's work computer, strictly excluding files and databases protected by legal professional privilege and client information. A preliminary analysis recorded an absence of any non-work activity. No personal correspondence, external search queries, or contacts unrelated to Green's professional duties were found on the device. The workstation had been used exclusively for the law firm's ongoing tasks. Part 11: Technical Forensics. Report from the Transport Forensic Laboratory. Land Rover discovery. Owner, Thomas Green. Specialists recovered data from the external Garmin navigation unit and studied the logs for the period from September 13th to 15th, 2012. The device recorded movement from the Sydney residence to the Kedumba Valley parking area without any unscheduled stops. Satellite data confirmed that until the vehicle was discovered by police on September 15th, it remained stationary. No signs of firmware tampering or log file alteration were found. An inspection of the body control module, the BCM, showed that the door and trunk opening cycles fully corresponded to the timeline of events provided in Thomas Green's interrogation protocols. The odometer reading matched the distance from Sydney to the valley and back, ruling out any hidden trips around the area. The cabin and cargo area were checked using luminol and ultraviolet light. Despite the vehicle's operation over the following 5 months, no traces of blood washdown or the presence of other biological fluids were detected. The technical data supports Thomas Green's alibi. Volvo XC60, owner, Emma Green. An examination of the navigation system and onboard computer showed that the last activity was recorded on the evening of September 12th, when Emma Green returned from the publishing house office. From that moment on, the vehicle's ignition was never turned on, and the GPS module recorded no movement. The all-wheel drive had remained in the garage. Electronic data confirmed that the driver's door lock was last opened that same evening. The odometer reading matched the figures at the end of the final recorded route, confirming that the vehicle had not been driven after September 12th. During the inspection of the interior and trunk, forensic experts found lens cases and copies of books. No biological traces were identified. According to the forensic results, Emma Green's vehicle was not used between the night of September 12th and the moment of its seizure. Mobile devices, Thomas and Emma Green. Data analysis confirmed that on September 13th, both smartphones simultaneously lost their signal in the Wentworth Falls area upon registering at the final cell tower near the Kedumba Pass. Internal navigation logs contain no GPS pings regarding movements within the mountain range. Due to the dense forest canopy and the shielding terrain, the modules failed to record location coordinates. The last saved tag in the map cache corresponds to the entry point of the national park. The only activity recorded during the entire period was an emergency call from Thomas Green's phone on September 14th at 7:42 p.m. Technical forensics of the logs confirmed that the connection was extremely unstable and was only made possible by a brief meteorological window. The technical examination of Thomas Green's seized digital media provided the investigation with no evidence. The devices were returned to the owner. Personal laptop. Owner: Emma Green. An analysis of the search history and cache for the 3 months leading up to the disappearance revealed deliberate preparation for the trip on September 13th. The user systematically researched topics such as accidents in the Kedumba Valley, fall-related injuries, and lethal dosages of sedatives in combination with alcohol. The investigation was particularly drawn to Emma Green's interest in meteorological anomalies. The browser logs contain queries regarding the impact of storm fronts on visibility near the Kedumba Pass and articles on flash floods isolating canyons. Green was seeking confirmation that a September cyclone could completely block rescue access to the lowlands. Supplement to investigation materials. NPWS registration log. During the review of the National Parks and Wildlife Service, NPWS logs, an entry dated September 6, 2012, was discovered regarding the registration of a route into the restricted zone of the Kedumba Valley. The application was accepted by the duty operator over the phone. Registration log data. Applicant: Emma Green. Group composition: 2 people, Emma Green, Thomas Green. Arrival date: September 13, 2012. Vehicle: Range Rover, license plate recorded. Contact information: Emma Green's personal mobile number provided. The NPWS operator confirmed to the investigation that during the conversation, they strongly recommended postponing the visit due to the forecasted storm front. The applicant refused, stating that she took full responsibility and that these specific weather conditions were necessary for completing the project. Detailed images of inaccessible areas of the King's Tableland Plateau, located off the tourist tracks, were found in the map cache. The deleted browsing history contains links to forums discussing locations where recovering a body is impossible without specialized equipment. Forensics confirmed that the queries were entered from the home IP address during hours when Thomas Green was at his workplace or at the gym, confirmed by billing records. Access to the laptop was protected by Emma Green's personal password and unique pattern lock. These findings indicate that Emma Green planned to lure her spouse to the Great Western Walk National Park, specifically during a period of extreme weather conditions, to commit acts of violence or to stage an accident. Thomas Green's participation in these search sessions is ruled out based on his location data. Based on the newly discovered circumstances obtained during the technical forensics of the digital media, the investigation team officially notified Thomas Green of a change in his status. Previously, he was the prime suspect in the missing person case. His status has been reclassified to a witness to a disappearance and a potential victim. All previously imposed restrictions on his travel and professional activities have been annulled. Part 12: Emma and her men. During the reinterrogation, Thomas Green was presented with evidence of his wife's covert online activity and private life. When Thomas was informed of Emma's pregnancy, he showed signs of clear emotional shock. He officially stated that his wife had said nothing to him about her condition, and in their private conversations, the topic of a new addition to the family had never been raised. Reviewing the list of Emma's search queries regarding his elimination and the staging of an accident caused the witness extreme surprise. He confirmed to the investigation that it was Emma who had insisted on the trip to the Kedumba Pass on those specific dates, justifying the choice of location and time as their wedding anniversary. Ultimately, the investigation concluded that Thomas Green was completely unaware of his wife's plans. The theory of his involvement in her disappearance was officially declared unsubstantiated. The investigation sent a formal request to the clinic where Emma Green was treated, as well as to her attending physician and psychiatrist. The goal was to find any records indicating abnormalities in her mental state or complaints that could explain her secretive behavior. However, the medical examination results revealed no anomalies. Emma Green's medical record contained no documented complaints about mental health or any signs of depression or psychosis. The doctors confirmed she was perfectly healthy. Based on this clean medical record, a forensic psychologist prepared a final report. The key finding was that preparations to eliminate her husband began 3 months before Emma's disappearance, 1 month before her pregnancy began. This fact allowed for the total exclusion of the theory regarding a destructive state caused by hormonal changes. The psychological profile confirmed that Emma Green's actions were dictated solely by cold calculation for the sake of a clean slate. The systematic nature of her actions both before and during her pregnancy evidenced full self-control and an absence of mental disorders. A request for mutual legal assistance was sent by the Attorney General's Department to the UK Home Office. From there, the instruction reached the International Requests Department of Scotland Yard, whose detectives conducted an interrogation of Julian Ward in London. During the interrogation, Ward confirmed the fact of their affair. However, his testimony only highlighted how little he knew of Emma's real intentions. Julian stated he was excited about her appointment to the London office and was waiting for Emma and her son to move, but their joint planning ended there. He categorically denied that they had discussed any ways of solving the problem regarding Thomas. Ward had not been privy to the plans to eliminate her husband or the details of her manipulations. Moreover, the news of Emma's pregnancy was as shocking a revelation to him as it was to her husband. His testimony fully matched the content of their correspondence. Julian saw only the tip of the iceberg, while Emma played her own game, not trusting him completely. Part 13, Final Status. July 16, 2013. The investigation has officially exhausted all available operational resources. Detective Carter has prepared the final brief of evidence for the New South Wales Coroner's Court. Since no direct evidence of Emma Green's death has been found and her criminal intent has been proven, the police are ceasing the active search. The case is moving to cold case status. For Thomas Green, this marks the beginning of a 7-year period of legal waiting. After this period expires, he will be able to apply to the Supreme Court to have his wife declared deceased and to manage her assets. Part 14, The Badgerys Creek Discovery. September 18, 2025. In the Badgerys Creek area of Western Sydney, where a residential cluster, a new metro line, and a cathedral are being built as part of the infrastructure development for the new airport, a construction crew discovered human remains. The skeleton was found during the excavation of a foundation pit at a depth of 1.5 meters. The results of the genetic identification were received 4 months later. The DNA profile did not yield a direct match in the databases, leading to a court-ordered DNA relationship testing. The investigation revealed a match with the data of Oliver James Green, now 20 years old. The test confirmed a close biological relationship. Based on this conclusion, the identity of the deceased has been officially established. The remains belong to Emma Louise Green. Part 15, The Flaw in the Foundation. Based on the identification of Emma Louise Green's remains, the New South Wales Police officially reopened the investigation. Due to the body being discovered in Badgerys Creek during excavation work, which directly contradicts the 2012 version of her disappearance in the Blue Mountains National Park, the case has been reclassified as a homicide investigation. The method of concealing the body in a wasteland indicates the premeditated nature of the crime. Detective Carter, who led the case 13 years ago, has once again taken charge of the investigation. As a priority action, the police revoked the previous death certificate, changing Emma Louise Green's status from presumed dead in the absence of a body to deceased as a result of violent actions. An official subpoena was issued to Thomas Green to provide new testimony. Since his 13-year-old version of his wife's disappearance in the mountains is now completely debunked by the location of the remains, he has been officially moved from witness status to the prime suspect, a person of interest. Simultaneously, Detective Carter and Homicide Squad officers pulled all archived interrogation protocols from 2012 and 2013 to identify contradictions with the newly discovered evidence. Detective Carter reconstructed the events of the evening of September 12, 2012. According to Thomas's parents' testimony, the couple arrived at their home around 7 p.m., had dinner, and left their son Oliver for the weekend. Around 9:30 p.m., Thomas and Emma said their goodbyes and drove home. In 2012, this episode was not recorded in reports as significant, as there was no reason to verify the family car's routine route. However, in 2026, Carter compared the route from the parents' house to the Green residence with the location where the remains were found and noted that it passed directly through Badgerys Creek. During the investigation, Detective Carter discovered that in early 2019, Thomas Green's law firm received a contract to provide legal support for the state development project in Badgerys Creek. While studying the cadastral maps for the future airport and metro, Green realized that his perfect hiding spot from 13 years ago was now at the epicenter of a future construction site. He understood he had at most 1 year before excavators would break the ground. Acting proactively, Thomas began liquidating assets, converting funds into cryptocurrency. When the pandemic swept the world in 2020, and Australia introduced some of the harshest lockdowns globally, Green officially obtained an exit permit for a long-term business mission, one of the few legal ways to leave the country under total lockdown conditions. An official extract from the movement record system, obtained by Carter in 2026 via a request to the Australian Border Force, recorded only a departure status in December 2020. Green flew to Singapore. In the return travel column, it read, "No record of return. No data regarding Thomas Green crossing the border back into the country was found." From that moment on, his digital biography in the country ceased entirely, leaving no trace in border or financial control databases. Oliver James Green, now 20 years old, was summoned for an official record of interview. During the procedure, he confirmed that his father, Thomas Green, had left Australia back in late 2020 and has had virtually no contact with the family since then. According to Oliver, his father left only a targeted trust fund in his name to cover tuition fees and house maintenance. Since the prime suspect is outside the country and his current whereabouts are unknown, Detective Carter has begun preparing materials to place Thomas Green on the Interpol International Wanted List.